folks, and welcome to Saving Miller. So I want to talk to you today very seriously about the situation. We need your help. There's not enough of us to go around, okay? So unless you've been living in a cave, hiding under a rock for the last couple of years, you're aware of the problem, okay? We've got supply chain issues, we've got food shortages. Food shortages are increasing, the cost of energy is increasing, you can't get the stuff you need. There's a very disrupted supply and demand balance, so before the pandemic, things were very balanced, but they were also tuned to a very fine point. So if you ordered something from a factory, the supply chain was efficient enough to really get that product moved through the shipping and the distribution very, very quickly, just in time inventory and manufacturing, if you will. However, with the disruptions and the shifts in the labor force and the changes in the global order and now the current war, things are not like they used to be. Will they get back to that? I don't know. I have no idea. Probably not, though. Probably not. These disruptions are probably going to last for a while. And so if you're concerned about the cost of food in the grocery store, if you're concerned about the issues getting products and services that you need in order to live your life, you're going to have to find a different way of doing things. And so we are no geniuses, and we did not actually expect that this kind of disruption would happen. However, it has been very, shall I say, encouraging to us that we had already taken the steps before the disruption in order to get primarily our food supply straightened out. So here's what we need. We need more people to do the kinds of things that we're doing here. I want to address these so that you can understand what I'm talking about. We've been very, very intentional with the kinds of things that we plant, our seed supply, our food supply, the animals that we have. We've been extremely intentional. These are not accidents. Maybe it seems like it sometimes, but we have intentionally planted and nurtured specific animals in specific ways. So let's look at some of these things. Now, right now, obviously, we can still get seeds. And so we've got a garden planted here. We've got a gopher that's invading. But in general, we've got the kind of plants here that are heritage. Okay, so that means that we can harvest a seed from a tomato, let's say. We've got a tomato plant here. We could just let that thing rot in here, and guess what happens? Right here. This is, you could call it a volunteer tomato. However, because we've got seeds that are not hybrids, these are heritage seeds. All of the stuff in our garden, I believe, is heritage seeds. So we can replant and grow the same product just like the parent plant. And so that means that we don't have to rely on the seed companies to provide the seeds or the young plants. And so what I'm asking of you is this: stop buying your tomatoes and other plants from Lowe's and Home Depot and some of the other nurseries. I used the wrong word. It's heirloom. It's not heritage. It's heirloom. Buy heirloom plants that will reproduce true to form, and you'll secure your seed supply for the next year. And so we've done this, and we maybe are somewhat careless gardeners, but some of this is intentional too. We have so many tomato plants here, like we can't keep up. These have all planted themselves from the birds eating some of the tomatoes, and then we allow the tomatoes to just drop here. We've got peppers that are doing the same thing, pepper plants that are coming up. This is stuff that we have not planted. And so by maintaining these beds in somewhat of a disorderly fashion like this, where the unused or the damaged fruit falls back into the soil, gets absorbed by the soil, it plants itself again. So we don't have a nursery, we don't have to go somewhere. It just produces. All we have to do is water it. And so that's a principle that I really challenge you to adopt in your gardening. If you're growing vegetables like this, use heirloom plants and seeds so that you can have a sustainable garden in that way. So that's one thing I'd like to challenge you with. Let's go look at another. Okay, so let's take a look at our animals. So something that I've noticed that distresses me a lot is the way that a lot of people raise chickens and other birds and animals. The same thing happens with goats and sheep. People will say, oh, that breed looks cute, or that breed, lays this color egg or whatever. Well, people do it with dogs too. It drives me nuts. So breeds have been established and bred for specific purposes. And so if you've got 14 different kinds of chickens, you can isolate them and you can manage that if you really pay attention. But in general, you can't really reproduce very well. You may end up with a bunch of crossbreeds that aren't really purposeful. So please stop doing this. So we had tried, we got a specific breed, and that's the only kind of chicken we had. We've only had 2 types of chickens on this farm. We had the cream leg bars. Let's move into the shade, maybe he'll be happier. We had the cream leg bars and we enjoyed them. They were nice, not very hardy, and they weren't very good for meat. They were just too small, they didn't grow fast enough, but they foraged fairly well. And so we changed to the American breast. So if you follow the channel, you've seen those. We have videos about them. They're very expensive, by the way. A chick is $30 or something insane like that. So obviously, we're not going to be buying American breast chicks to raise for meat. That's completely ludicrous. You end up with a $60 chicken. So we currently, for all the birds that we have only 3 breeds. So, oh, this little guy, not too concerned about it, but one day he will be. So we have chickens, ducks, and turkeys, and they're all one single breed. So we can hatch our own, and that is what we do. Actually, we sell quite a few small birds, hatchlings. We sell hatching eggs, and so I would really encourage you if you understand. So if you understand the seriousness of the situation, because somebody, yeah. You're going to need to think about these things and do something similar. I'm not saying use the same breeds that we do. I'm not saying only have one breed, but we have one breed of chickens, for instance, that lays quite well and tastes absolutely fantastic. And so that's a dual purpose bird where we can hatch our own. And the turkeys are the same way. These turkeys actually lay pretty well. And so we've got a situation where we can produce our own food indefinitely as long as we have the pasture to feed the animals. And I would really encourage you to think about this as you're trying to grow your own food, as you're concerned about the food supply shortage. Stick with reproducible animals, and we already talked about the plants. Now another thing, the third thing to consider is feed supply. Feed security. So we don't really feed the cows. We give them a supplement, but they would survive just fine on the grass. So we've got cows. We have this goat. They can all just survive just fine out here. They don't need supplemental feed to stay alive and to be quite healthy. Now, the same is true for the birds, but it's a little trickier for them. They do need some supplemental stuff, I think, in order to be reasonably productive. And so if we were more concerned about it right now, we would plant a bigger variety of plants in the pasture, and we would continue to do like we've done in the past, letting the annual grasses go to seed so that they can reproduce. And so this is something I would really encourage you to consider. If possible, identify and maintain a sustainable food supply for your animals. Supplementing is fine, it's great as long as you can get the feed. But what happens when there's no wheat? We don't actually feed our animals wheat, so we don't care. But there are other grains that will probably be affected by shortages like this as well. And so, those 3 things, I'd really encourage you, help us out. And the effect that we can have is that the supply chains will adapt to this new reality. If there are enough people that do what we do, then supply chains will develop. And so, for instance, I understand that right now it's extremely difficult to find baby turkeys. Well, we have them. We have the eggs. And people are so happy that they can buy turkeys from us because they can't get them anywhere else. And so if there are more of you out there that do this, we can create our own local supply chains that are really not as disruptible as the global ones. If you're relying on feed from the Ukraine for your animals, you're in trouble. If you're relying on a hatchery in Iowa, you could be in trouble. So if you can drive across town or take your bicycle if you can't afford the fuel, then you can find someone like us who has a breeding flock. All of our flocks are breeding quality flocks. And so we maintain them that way. We plan them out. We keep them. Last year we had 3 kinds of turkeys. We kept one breed. We didn't keep multiples because that just causes problems. You got to separate them. So if there are more people who are doing this, we're all going to be less reliant on global food supply chains and the grocery stores. And I mean, we're just tremendously fortunate. Like, our grocery stores here in Arizona, no problems. I don't see empty shelves, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, we do actually have local dairy. We've got local alfalfa. We've got local citrus, so this state produces a lot of food. Actually, just across the street, they grow radishes, they grow carrots, watermelons. So there is a local food supply, but this is a metro area of 6 million people. That's a lot of food. And it may not be, super sustainable the way that it is. We rely on commercial agriculture, not we as in our family, but the city relies on commercial agriculture tremendously in order to produce food for the people here in Arizona. And so if there are issues with fuel, if there are issues with fertilizers and things like that, people are going to be in trouble. And so if more of us can create independence from those supply chains, we're all going to be better off. We will. And so this is what I'm asking of you. Take those small steps. I just pointed out 3 small steps that you can take, no matter which one you're focusing on. If you focus on the animals or you focus on vegetables, you can do those things and improve things for all of us, because the tools and materials and things that you need to build something like that, let's say the netting, those kinds of products will become more and more available as well. If there's a demand for it, typically supply ramps up to meet that demand. And that's the influence that we can have to strengthen our food security. It's a lot of work, though. That's probably why he's crying. All right, folks. I hope you enjoy this challenge. Let me know what you think in the comments. And we will try to continue to show you how we do things and encourage you. You can do it as well. So that's all for this week. Saving Miller out.